Hi everyone, thanks a lot for joining me today in this OpenChain webinar. My name is Ana Jimenez. I'm currently the OSPO program manager at Tudu Group. Some of you might know me from previous OpenChain calls and meetings, for attending to Tudu meetings and workday activities in the community. And today I'm here to talk about one of the latest Tudu initiatives, the OSPO MindMap, and explain to the OpenChain community how they can contribute to this initiative to guide OSPOs in their open source supply chains and compliance journey. For today's agenda, I will first share how this started, like why creating an OSPO MindMap. Then I will continue explaining what is this project about, sharing the OSPO MindMap general structure, and finally share with you a process and ways of how the OpenChain community can contribute and where they can add their knowledge of open source supply chains and licensing in the OSPO MindMap view. To kick off the first section, I would like to share with you a short story. To be honest, the OSPO MindMap was something that I wasn't expecting to add to the group GitHub organization and repo. It was something that I just started to clarify ideas and scheme some concepts to help others and also to help me to break down this OSPO complex term into action items, because I love to create mind maps. But then I saw the community asking me to please have this open source in a repo where the community can participate and contribute. Then at that point is when we decided to host a second version of the OSPO MindMap under the Tudu Group GitHub organization and have this available for the wider community. So why creating initially this mind map? So the main motivator of why creating and building a mind map for the first time, an OSPO mind map, was because I keep hearing when they try to learn about OSPOs, I cannot get the point because OSPOs are diverse. Like there is not a single template to create an OSPOs. In fact, the OSPO teams itself, one single OSPO teams are composed by multiple roles and multiple backgrounds, responsible of multiple tasks related with open source. And makes sense, right? Since OSPOs are this space, this department, this group of people where the organization invests to put together all the open source activities they are engaging or they need to take care of, and put a strategy on top of all that to have better alignment, to enhance open source adoption, and to accelerate innovation. So OSPOs are the open source accelerators of organizations. Depending on the OSPO you ask, you might find OSPOs that are on different stages and they are focused on different tasks depending on the OSPO level. So for instance, you might find an OSPO that is only focused on legal education, like trying to provide open source compliance, trying to manage open source inventory, making sure that all the developers are up to date of which open source projects they need to contribute at, how to contribute at, knowing all the licenses and how to engage and how to interact with those licenses. But maybe you might also find other OSPOs, maybe some seasoned OSPOs that are more focused on how to become a strategic decision-making partner, or how to engage with communities, how to host open source projects. And that will depend on the OSPO level and the ability to execute that OSPOs or that organization has at at that moment. With this complexity, what I usually do with complex terminology is try to break down into small pieces that we can understand easier. The question here will be, how can I break down the big picture of the OSPO into pieces that we can actually manage and understand? So since I love mind maps, it's not the first mind map I do, I thought that was a good practice, a fun activity to do. And that is when I created this mind map version based on the previous OSPO studies from the tutor group, the previous OSPO models, and other learnings from OSPOers. I shared this on Twitter and LinkedIn, and that is when I realized that actually a lot of people find this resource quite useful, and other people wanted to contribute to that. And it's when I created a discussion in the OSPO forum to suggest creating a new repo to work together on an OSPO mind map. The OSPO mind map is a way to break down OSPOs into pieces that can be managed and into pieces where the community can actually easily contribute, and it schemes the main open source program office responsibilities, sizes, behavior, and team size. It also serves, as I said, as a starting point for other communities, like, for instance, OpenChain, to share their expertise and resources on concrete areas, like in this case, legal education. And of course, is cross-community and open collaboration. I have dropped you the link to the interactive OSPO MindMap version that people can check. But I will also share here with you an interactive demo to explore the different categories and all the actions that you can do in this OSPO MindMap. All right, so this is the interactive MindMap version. As you can see, it's hosted under ospomindmap.tudogroup.org. And if we zoom in, we can see the different sections: roles, behavior, size, and responsibilities. And just imagine, if you want to just focus on responsibilities, you can click on these white dots and discard the other things that you don't need now, and bring attention to only the OSPO responsibilities. You can also do the same. And let's see, we want to focus on legal education, so we don't need these ones, for instance. And now we have a shorter MindMap version. And as you can see, we already have some contributions from some OpenChain community members that added this link for Introduction to Open Source License and Compliance Management course. You can add links to the Markdown file, and it will bring you to the link that you added. Also, we added the link to open source tools. So, for instance, it will go to existence open source software license and open source software license compliance tools and all the different toolings. So I think it is a great source for people to use as a starting point, to have one view of all the different resources for OSPOs in legal education. So yeah, that's all. So now that we have explored the interactive version, we can go more into detail of the overall MindMap structure. As you have seen in the interactive version, this MindMap is divided into 4 main areas that are responsibilities, roles, behavior, and team side. In order to ease community contributions, we created a second version of the MindMap, that is the one that you have just seen, that was created using MarkMap. One of the community participants suggested this great tooling. I didn't know about that, but I think I'm gonna use it from now on for so many things, because it allows people to create mind maps using Markdown syntax and in our Markdown file, and it renders that Markdown file as an interactive HTML mind map, and also allows you to export the Markdown file into an SVG version. So I think, like, first, for community contributions, it's quite convenient because you don't need to have coding skills. You just need to know the basics of Markdown syntax, and it allows non-coders and coders to actually contribute to this project. If we look through the lens of OpenChains and how OpenChain's community can share their expertise in supply chain and open source legal compliance, you might have seen that in the MindMap, there is a huge OSPO responsibility that is called open source legal education. And right now we have, it is divided into 3 main branches. The first one is manage legal risk and licenses. The second one is educate developers. And the third one is taking software inventory. And here is where I see that OpenChain can give a lot of value to this MindMap and can share their knowledge. This community has been there since ages and has great resources. I know you have a lot of training courses and certifications, links to webinars, articles, or studies, and great tooling documentation that can be added here in this MindMap. So when the OSPO community or any people willing to kick off an OSPO or any established OSPO wants to know more about resources of open source legal education, they can go to the MindMap. That is like the starting point to look at, and maybe they can see all the different training courses for educate developers to open source legal and compliance, or they can see the different set of open source tools that the OpenChain community has been working at. And this allows us to first don't duplicate effort, because OpenChain are the experts on this field, and try to exchange knowledge between both communities, which I think it's also great. And just short story about the tooling that I previously mentioned, that is MindMap. As I said, it has an open source license, that is great. It renders markdowns as HTML. It has a really handy CLI, and for those people that uses VS Code editor, it has a VS Code extension. So as if you are editing the markdown file using VS Code, you can visualize how the mind map will look like with that extension in just one click, which is, I think I just love it. And it's a friendly format to ease community contributions, since it uses Markdown. I've also dropped you 2 links there, the documentation of MindMap and the source code where it's hosted on GitHub, in case you want to know more about this tooling. Last, let's move to ways where the community can contribute and how to contribute. All this documentation is also in the repo, in the OSPology repo, in the OSPO MindMap section. So everything that I'm gonna share here, you can at any time check in that repo in the README file. You will find a content folder, an image folder, an additional info folder, and a public one, and a public folder. So the most important section is the content one, because it's where the Markdown file is hosted, is where the MindMap as a Markdown file is hosted. If you want to make any additions to the content, if you want to, let's say I want to add a new OpenChain training course that is not there. So you just need to go to the content folder and edit this Markdown file. And that's all, and submit the pull request. and a maintainer will review it and will merge the changes, and that's all. It's easy as that. Then we have additional folders such as the image folder, where you will find the same MindMap in a SVG file in case you want to download that. And also you will find the HTML version, that is the interactive MindMap. And in the additional info folder, you will find the first version of the MindMap. And then you will also find the public folder. So if you go to the public folder, you will find the HTML version of the MindMap, and everything that is in that folder, it's mirroring the OSPO MindMap.todogroup.org website. The process, as you can see, it's like any other open source project. Imagine that I want to add a new, as I said, a new open source licensing training course that wasn't in the OSPO MindMap. So I just need to go to the OSPO MindMap markdown file and make all the additions I want to make and send the pull request. And then a maintainer of this OSPology repo will review that pull request, and two things can happen. One is, I have the maintainer request changes to the contributor. And once those changes are made, we can either discard and close the pull request, or we can approve and merge, or the maintainer can directly approve and merge because it looks nice, it looks great. And then the same maintainer generates the HTML MindMap. In the near future, I would love to see this as something that is not manual, but it's automated. But right now, we don't have that. If anyone wants to explore on ways to how to automate this process with the documentation of MindMap that I've recently shared, that person is more than welcome to help improve this experience and send a pull request, and we can work together on that. But right now, this is not an automatic process. This is something manual. So this maintainer generates the HTML MindMap and make changes to the HTML file that is hosted under the public folder. And once it's that, and waits for the deploy preview that Netlify shares. And if everything works right, that is merged and approved, and those changes will be finally visible at ospomindmap.todogroup.org. In the To-Do group, we have monthly meetings that we call workday activities, focused on To-Do contributors to the To-Do GitHub organizations. We have APAC and EMEA friendly time zone meetings, also for AMER friendly time zone meetings. And if you want to join, you just need to visit our To-Do community page. Look for the To-Do calendar, community calendar, where you will be able to export this calendar to your own calendar, or if you have a Google account, also to your Google account. And last but not least, just to let you know that the OSPO MindMap is hosted under the OSPology repo that has all the OSPO resources, such as the OSPO News To-Do newsletter, the community meetings, and the OSPO forum. And I've also shared with you the OSPology GitHub repo link in case you want to take a look of the different resources that are hosted there. And that's all. Thank you so much for staying until the end. And you can always reach out to me through the To-Do Slack channel as well, or drop me an email asking any questions you might face. In case you have questions now, I will be also happy to answer them. I really hope to see you in any upcoming To-Do meeting to help working on this OSPO MindMap initiative. Thank you so much, OpenChain. Thank you so much, Shane, for inviting me to this webinar. I have to leave now. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.